The Blake Lively, Ryan Reynolds and Justin Baldoni situation seems to be getting more and more crazy by the day, with loads of A-listers now seemingly getting involved. There are lawsuits flying left, right and centre all over Hollywood, and I wanted to try my best of giving some sort of timeline for all of these events and putting them in a chronological order and seeing if I can make a little bit more sense out of everything that's gone on the film It Ends With Us. So I wanted to take it back first of all, right before any of this. This was at the stage where Justin Baldoni is said to have contacted Colleen Hoover, who was actually the author of the novel It Ends With Us. It's said that Justin wanted to shed some light on DV abuse victims and letting their voices be heard. It was a big pull for him creating this project because, of course, the story does feature themes of DV. They got the rights to do the film a little later into the year, and as it turns out, it was also written into contractual agreement that 1% of the film's proceeds would go to DV abuse victims, which is, of course, it's really lovely, isn't it? Blake Lively entered the picture at the back end of 2022 when she was cast as Lily Bloom. But it wasn't until production started, which was roughly between May 2023 and early 2024, where things started to go a little bit pear-shaped. It's said that Blake started to take control of the wardrobe, and this was sidelining the costume designer that was hired for this film. It just so happens that the costume designer on this film was close friends with Blake Lively, so who knows, it might have been something that those guys spoke about. It's all of this is alleged, it's only what's being reported now. I think we're quite a long way away from all of the key finer details to open up this story. It's obviously ongoing. But yeah, she took over the wardrobe. It completely ignored the direction's vision, obviously Justin, and it's said to be going in a completely different direction for what the character was supposed to have been looking like. This progressed to much more crucial roles in the production, though, when Blake actually started writing lines for the script, and on a daily basis the production would be set back by Blake trying to refigure the way that the script was supposed to be, the way that the script was set out. It even got to the stage where Ryan Reynolds ended up getting involved. Now we'll talk a little bit more about Ryan Reynolds later because he's a big part of this story, but for now, there was a scene where Ryan Reynolds changed a rooftop scene, for example, to a scene including Deadpool beating the living piss out of just... That's come out of nowhere. No, I'm only joking. I don't know what the scene was changed, what it was changed to. But yeah, we'll speak more about Ryan's involvement later. It all gets a little bit... It gets a little bit dicey later on. Blake claimed that Justin had really inappropriate behaviour on set. He spoke about all sorts of there was sexual harassment claims, speaking about really inappropriate things like Blake's dead dad, for example. And I mean, just really bizarre, obviously completely inappropriate stuff. And she threatened to leave at one stage, but Justin persuaded her not to and didn't want to go in the direction of recasting, not just because it would cost the company millions to replace and obviously pay off Blake for her parts in it, but it was also worried about Blake spinning the reasoning for leaving against him. From Blake's point of view, like I was saying, she feels like Baldoni's behaviour was really inappropriate, and it was around this point that she drafted a letter as well, this letter of protection, for not just Baldoni, but actually a Jamie Heath to sign as well. And some of the things on this letter really do raise an eyebrow, because they included things like no more showing nude videos or images to Blake, no more mention of Baldoni's alleged previous porn addiction, and like I said previously, no more mentions of Blake's dead father. Now, I don't know how these things would come up on a movie set anyway, like if they're preparing for a scene and Blake wanted to get really into the role, your emotions are coursing, I used to have a searing porn addiction, and action. I don't really understand. Yeah, it was around this time that Ryan Reynolds started showing up on set, and he just started shouting, "It's pooling time," and just started pooling every... I don't even know what that's supposed to mean. Ryan Reynolds apparently showed up on set one of the days. I think they were involved in a meeting. There was a Sony representative there. Of course, Baldoni was there. I think Blake was there. And Ryan got involved. He ended up coming on set and going into this meeting, and he berated Baldoni. Apparently, it was very aggressive, a different side to Ryan than any of us have seen. And that's where a lot of the conversation has come from in terms of Ryan and even this story, because it's said that he was really aggressive and completely out of line with Baldoni, and this was all to do with this fat shaming claim from Blake, which was off the back of, my God, man, there's so much to this, which was off the back of this stunt lift that they were doing. And Baldoni had previously asked her for a weight because he had some problems with his back, obviously from carrying this film. Joking again. No, he had some enlarged discs and he needed to know. So he asked her for a weight before trying to do the lift. And then Blake, of course, took that the wrong way. And that led to this situation, which is all just seems really avoidable to me. I just don't see how it could go and elevate to that sort of level where you're getting a meeting about it and stuff. But here we are. And going into post-production, once again, there are problems. Blake is said to be she had heavily involved herself in the editing of the film too, which she wasn't really supposed to be doing. And it's also been rumoured that it's causing a bit of a drift in Blake and Ryan's relationship. Of course, it's going to cause a few problems. It's a huge story. Of course, there's loads of lawsuits involved. It's definitely going to be a stressful time for both of them. But a load of people have been coming out with all sorts of stuff saying like Blake fell for Baldoni or Ryan was incredibly insecure what was going on, which is actually really why he showed up on set. And we've got a little bit more about this later on, actually. Some Instagram stories from Candace Owens, but we'll get into that a little while later. I'm trying my best to keep this into some sort of timeline. I don't know how well I'm doing, but it's a little bit of a complex one, this, and it's constantly changing. Anyway, so this is all after the film has been sorted now, which, by the way, the film is said to have done really well. I think it cost something like 25 to 30 million dollars, and I'm pulling that out of the air. I can't remember how much it was made, but how much it cost to make, should I say. It did really well anyway, so it's such a shame that this has come off the back of it and has gotten so much more of the attention and the limelight as opposed to the actual story in the film. And it's not really being celebrated for its achievements with how well it's done. It's more so the drama that's surrounding it. On December the 20th last year, this was the point where Blake Lively filed a sexual harassment complaint against Justin. He claims he made a hostile workplace. Documents claim that the actor participated in astroturfing, and I don't think that means that he's doing some sort of labouring job or returfing someone's back garden. It's actually defined in the complaint as the deceptive practice of orchestrating a smear campaign under the guise of the public. At this stage, it's getting pretty serious. And the very next day, the New York Times created an article talking about the alleged smear campaign set up by Justin Baldoni after she accused him of the misconduct on set. And then the following day, I'm going to run out of breath here, Baldoni's dropped by his talent agency, which typically enough and funnily enough is also the same agency that manages Taylor Swift, who's supposedly a close friend of Blake, Blake herself and Ryan Reynolds, and it's rumoured that all three of these were actually pushing this agency to drop Baldoni. And at the very same time, or a similar time at least, a few celebrities were coming out of the woodwork in support of Blake. Even the actual writer of the book, Colleen Hoover, and Gwyneth Paltrow was another one. Of course, Taylor Swift, as I mentioned at the beginning, and there's Amber Heard and Amy Schumer, which I'll be honest, I think that counts against you more than counting for you, to be completely honest, but there we are. Yeah, so there was actually, at this point, literally just before Christmas, you got a feel for the guy in this instance. Well, I mean, it depends, actually. I mean, all of this is here saying nothing's actually been proven yet as far as I can tell, but if he is to be guilty for all of these alleged sexual harassment charges, then it's fair enough. We just don't know enough information yet, I don't think. But yeah, he was given an award for courage and compassion in advocating on behalf of women and girls, which is just so ironic, like considering how all of this has transpired and turned out and the claims against him. But if it isn't true and he's had this award took away from him, of course he's been dropped by his talent agency as well. You've just got to feel for the guy. It really is like a dreadful situation for him and all round, if we're being completely honest. Yeah, so just before the new year, this was after everything's happened with Baldoni here from a professional point of view. As we mentioned, the awards being dropped. And of course, he's really in the line of fire now on social media as it started to heat up on him and everyone was backing Blake. He filed a libel lawsuit of $250 million against the New York Times. Yeah, and in a statement, Baldoni's lawyers said, in its rush to publish a one-sided, unsubstantiated story of Lively, the Times got it dramatically wrong. The aftershocks have been disastrous for plaintiffs, and they now, reluctantly and knowing the damage, cannot be fully undone. Bring suit to hold the Times accountable for its egregious misfire. And suits just keep flying everywhere, like Cristiano Ronaldo celebrating a goal. Blake Lively then sues Baldoni for orchestrating a smear campaign that she says has damaged her career. She believed Justin Baldoni was organising a sophisticated scheme to undermine her reputation in retaliation to speaking up about the misconduct on set. Which, you know, once again, like if that's to be believed, fair play. Yeah, speak up about it. But it's just... Is it? It's just one of them. That's why these things are getting really messy. And of course, Justin Baldoni clearly feels a certain way about it because he then sued Blake and Ryan, amongst a few others, for $400 million. So, yeah, just pocket change. And saying that Lively's claims of sexual harassment were false, and that they had evidence to back that up, that there was no smear campaign on Lively, that Lively and her publicist actually had one on Baldoni. So it's all getting a little bit catty, isn't it? Now, the New York premiere was quite an interesting one. There was a photo that came out of Baldoni in the basement with his family. I think this is because Blake didn't want to see him and requested him to be as far away as possible. And I think even, I don't know if it was the London one or the New York one, but they wouldn't have photos together. I don't know how much is to be said on this for Baldoni, because a lot of the cast members on the premiere, well, I don't think any of them actually did pose with Baldoni for any of the photos. I think there was something about them not following each other on social media as well. Of course, you've got the person who actually made the novel has come out on Blake's side. So, you know, there's a lot of things here that seem to be weighing on Baldoni. But yeah, I think it's starting to take a little bit of a turn, at least over recent times anyway. Because on January the 21st, Baldoni released a 7-minute video of them dancing together. And it just seemed like they're vibing. It's from what I can tell, I don't know, they seem to have really good chemistry together. But irregardless of like their chemistry, whether they're vibing or not, Ryan Reynolds didn't like it. And people are theorising whether that's the real reason why he was starting to show up on set a lot more and stuff. And speaking of that, this is where Candace Owens comes into the frame, because she started putting all of these screenshots out onto Instagram, which I'll run through with you now, because they are really interesting and they're not looking too good from Ryan's point of view. So basically, Candace is talking about the perspective of someone else who's close to this film. And the information that she got from them, and she's just feeding it back to us. So we start off here. She says that this person is alleging that everything started when Ryan Reynolds decided to stroll onto the movie set one day and review the dailies. It said that this is an industry term for all the footage that they had filmed for the day, which just Why? Why are you doing that? If you're not involved with the film, I don't know. It really does heavily point to Ryan being a little bit insecure and a little bit wary and worried about what exactly those guys are filming. I don't know what he expects to see. I mean, you'd like to imagine that someone in his sort of position who's been around the world of filmmaking would at least understand. I mean, he's been in situations himself where he's had romantic partners in a film. He knows how it goes. But I think it's also about just trusting your partner. It can't be nice to see, but at the same time, if this is just, it's kind of your job. I don't know how much you can really say or be disgruntled with it. But anyway, moving on. So yeah, he started checking the dailies. He then also decided to take a look at the script, and between the two, something allegedly set him off. And then apparently there was arguments between Ryan and Blake in their trailer that were overheard by some of the cast, some of the crew. Ryan Reynolds started being on the set on a regular basis as if he were a chaperone, and that is when he started inserting himself into the actual production, including writing lines. So going back to that rooftop scene earlier, that we can just take this, now we know this information, we know that that's really what could have been happening there. And then it goes on to say the next part is what has been alleged via their lawsuits. Ryan began inserting themselves in an effort to change lines and change scenes. Yeah, okay. Yeah, so, I mean, Candace Owens has said this herself. It appears that what it's starting to look like is that this wasn't actually Blake, but Ryan Reynolds working behind the scenes, talking to Blake, speaking about how he wants things to look and how he wants things to change, which are really only born off of his insecurity because he's just worried about the intimacy and the chemistry that's being shared between Blake and Baldoni in this film, which once again, if that is to be believed, then that's a really sorry way to behave and act, especially from someone who's actually in the industry and knows how it works. You'd expect better, but here we are. I think some people in the limelight as well quite often can be the ones who are most insecure because they've got such built-up egos. There's a lot of narcissism involved. I think it leaves them quite susceptible to these sorts of things, even though it is still shocking. I mean, the guy is literally Deadpool. I don't know how much more you could want in a person. Ryan Reynolds, it doesn't get much bigger than him anyway in terms of the A-listers, but it just goes to show that no one's impenetrable to it, and I suppose that we're all human and we can all feel these ways, but there's certainly better ways to go about it than this. Anyway, so it's clear Ryan was determined to humiliate and win against Justin Baldoni. He went so far as to include lines in his separate movie, Deadpool and Wolverine. Yeah, I think there was like this deleted scene from the movie, and people are theorising whether that was actually a little bit of a stab at Baldoni and one of his shows and stuff. Basically just taking the piss out of having like this intimacy coordinator on set. He made fun of his feminism and his podcast, but this is all alleged, by the way. Yeah, so look, there's so much to this. I just don't think I'm going to be able to cover it all. There's a few more of those screenshots. If you guys want to go and find them, you can find that they're died around everywhere. They're not hard to find. Going over the last couple of days, though, Taylor Swift has seemingly been dragged into it now. Because it's said that she's trying to keep a distance from this, which I cannot blame her for doing whatsoever. It all seems just a little bit too dicey, all of this, and it's getting quite intense, and that's causing a little bit of tension and friction between Blake and herself. And an article here is saying Taylor Swift feels used by Blake and wishes the actress didn't drag her into this lawsuit. So yeah, it's a developing story. It seems everyone in Hollywood is getting involved. You can wait for the film about this in a good 5 years' time from now, 10 years' time from now, I'm sure, or a documentary at least anyway. My own personal take on this is, of course, it's something that you've got to be very careful with. We don't know all the facts yet. If Blake is to be believed, this is a really serious situation, as it is on the other side. But what I can say for certain, just looking at this story, from an outsider looking in at this point in time, I think there's a lot of egos involved. There's a lot of narcissism, a lot of people not getting their own way. And And yeah, it's all a bit sad, really. I think the only person at this stage that I'm willing to say that I completely do feel sorry for is the author of the book, Colleen, because she's obviously made a story that is really close to her heart. I think that it was actually based around someone in her family. I think it might have been a mum or a grandparent or something like that. And it's covering some really serious topics. And for her to get that book off the ground, be as popular as it was, and then get a film made for it to all be... And the film did really well, of course, like I mentioned earlier, but it's been really overshadowed by all of this drama between these, you know, seemingly A-listers who have had like quite a serious disagreement. And for the topics that are being discussed as well, with the sexual harassment, to be off the back of a film that discusses the sorts of issues that it does, it's also like tragically ironic. But yeah, I hope in the end, I hope going forward that we can at least get a little bit more clarity on this and what's actually happening. I hope that I've done somewhat of a decent job of trying to fill you guys in on some of the things that have been happening. Let me know your thoughts about it. What you think, who's in the right, who's in the wrong, or maybe it's a little bit of both, because as I say, I'm trying to stay well away from that at the moment because I'm just not entirely too sure. But yeah, thanks for watching, guys, and yeah, we'll see how this one unfolds, I suppose.